Onmakhanuaft amwakaligat gujtar, pananda e pharma y sistars tuidion. Ewas hg, desirviditi b yenden, amwaparants kamta oyur guridudion. Bt shuar faces tar endipel moen. They say parents aren't supposed to have favorites, but mine did. My sister and I graduated from college on the same day, but only one of us had our tuition paid for. For 4 years, I worked myself to exhaustion, while she lived the college experience our parents funded. They sat in that auditorium expecting to celebrate one daughter's success. They never imagined what would happen when my name was called to that stage, or what truth would be revealed in front of hundreds of witnesses. That day their faces turned pale, and everything changed. Hello, dear friends. Thank you for joining me today. I'm about to share a story from my own life, one filled with truth, betrayal, love, and redemption. Each story touches the soul and reveals what really happens behind closed doors. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I just want to know I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing to Grandma True Stories. It helps more people find these stories and know they're not alone either. Now let me tell you what really happened. I was 17 years old when my parents called Claire and me into the living room for an important family meeting. It was April of our senior year of high school, and college acceptance letters had been arriving for weeks. Claire and I had both been accepted to State University. Our first choice, a good school about 2 hours from home. I remember feeling so excited that morning. Claire and I would be roommates maybe. We'd always been close despite our 2-year age gap. I was the older sister, the one who helped her with homework and drove her to friends' houses. We'd talked about college together since we were kids, imagining what it would be like to finally be on our own. Mom and Dad sat on the couch, and I noticed immediately that something was wrong. Dad's jaw was tight, the way it got when he had to deliver bad news. Mom wouldn't meet my eyes. Girls, Dad began, clearing his throat. Your mother and I are very proud that you both got into State. It's a good school. The best in the state, Claire added, bouncing slightly in her chair. She'd always been the enthusiastic one, the one who lit up rooms with her smile. Yes, well, Dad continued, and his pause made my stomach drop. We need to talk about finances. Free. College is expensive, very expensive. We've looked at our savings and we've had to make a difficult decision. I felt my heart start to pound. I looked at Claire, but she was still smiling, not understanding what was coming. We can afford to pay for one of you to go to college, Mom said quietly. Just one. The room went silent. I heard the clock ticking on the wall, a sound I'd never noticed before. What do you mean one? I asked, my voice coming out smaller than I intended. Dad leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. We mean that we have enough saved to pay for tuition, room, board, and expenses for 4 years, but only for one child, so we'll both take out loans. I said quickly. We'll split it. Half and half? No, Mom said, and something in her tone made me freeze. We've thought about this very carefully. We've made our decision. Claire finally seemed to understand that something was wrong. Her smile had faded. What decision? She asked. Mom and Dad exchanged a look. One of those married couple looks where whole conversations happen in silence. We're going to pay for Claire's education, Dad said. The words hit me like a physical blow. I actually felt my chest tighten, like someone had reached in and squeezed my lungs. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. Claire has a higher GPA, Mom explained, as if this were perfectly reasonable. She's in the top 5% of her class. She has more potential for scholarships and graduate programs. It makes sense to invest in the child who has the better chance at success. I have a 3.7 GPA, I said, my voice rising. I'm in the top 15%. I'm on the honor roll. I volunteer at the hospital every weekend. Claire has a 3.95, Dad interrupted, and she's already been contacted by the honors college at State. They want her for their program. I could apply for that too. I protested. Rachel. Mom's voice was gentle, which somehow made it worse. We're not saying you're not smart or capable. We're just saying that Claire has a better academic record. She's more likely to get into a competitive graduate program, to get a good job. We have to make the choice that makes the most financial sense. Financial sense, I repeated, feeling tears burn behind my eyes. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't give them that. You can take out student loans, Dad said. Lots of kids do. Or you could go to community college for 2 years, save money, then transfer. You have options. She deserves it. Rachel, Mom added quietly. Your sister has worked very hard for her grades. And there it was. The sentence that would echo in my head for the next 4 years, for the rest of my life. She deserves it, but you don't. Claire looked stricken. Maybe I could, she started. This isn't up for discussion, Dad said firmly. We've made our decision. Rachel, you're going to have to find another way. I stood up, my legs shaking. So that's it. You're just going to pay for her and leave me with nothing. We're not leaving you with nothing, Mom said. We're giving you independence. You'll appreciate it someday, having made your own way. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I walked out of that living room with whatever dignity I had left and went to my room. I locked the door and sat on my bed, staring at the acceptance letter from State University pinned to my bulletin board. That night, I heard Claire crying in her room next door. Part of me wanted to comfort her. It wasn't her fault, after all, but a bigger part of me couldn't. She was getting everything, and I was getting a speech about independence and options. I didn't cry that night. I was too angry to cry. Instead, I got out a notebook and started researching student loans, scholarships, work-study programs, on-campus jobs, off-campus jobs. If my parents thought I was going to give up on State University, they were wrong. If they thought I was going to settle for community college while my little sister lived the full college experience, they were wrong about that too. I was going to State. I was going to get my degree. And I was going to do it without their help. By dawn, I had a plan. It wasn't a good plan. It would mean working multiple jobs, taking out maximum loans, applying for every scholarship I could find, no matter how small. It would mean no social life, no sorority, no study abroad, none of the college experiences that Claire would have. But I would do it. I would show them exactly what their overlooked daughter was capable of. 3 days later, I submitted my enrollment deposit to State University. I took out the maximum federal student loans. I applied for 27 scholarships before the end of May. I got a job at the campus bookstore for the fall semester. I found a work-study position in the library. I signed up to work at a coffee shop near campus 3 nights a week. My parents seemed surprised when I told them I was going to State after all. That's wonderful, honey, Mom said, but I heard the uncertainty in her voice. Are you sure you can manage it? I'll manage, I said coldly. The summer before college, Claire and I barely spoke. She tried a few times to apologize, to tell me it wasn't fair, but I couldn't hear it. Every time I looked at her, I saw the daughter our parents chose. The one who deserved it. In August, we packed our cars and drove to State University. Claire's car was full of new bedding, a mini fridge, decorations for her dorm room, all bought by our parents. My car held secondhand sheets, my old laptop, and a deep, burning determination that felt like it might consume me from the inside out. Move-in day was torture. Our parents helped Claire set up her room in the honors dorm, a beautiful building with study lounges and its own dining hall. My dorm was on the other side of campus, older and smaller. My parents helped me carry my boxes up 3 flights of stairs, then Dad handed me a $50 bill for groceries, and they left to take Claire to lunch. I sat on my bare mattress in my empty room and finally let myself cry, but only for 10 minutes. Then I dried my eyes, made my bed, and went to my first shift at the bookstore. That was the beginning. The beginning of 4 years that would test every bit of strength I had. 4 years of proving myself to parents who had already decided I wasn't worth the investment. 4 years that would lead to that graduation day, the day everything would change. Would you like me to proceed with Chapter 2? J'approuve CER 20HE grinned. The first semester nearly broke me. I had constructed what I thought was a workable schedule. Classes from 8 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, 4 days a week. The bookstore job from 3 to 6, Monday through Thursday. The library work-study position on Friday afternoons. The coffee shop on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday nights from 7 to midnight. Sundays were supposed to be for homework and rest. It looked manageable on paper. In reality, it was absolutely brutal. I would wake up at 6:30. Shower in the communal bathroom where there were never enough stalls and the hot water ran out by 7, then rush to my 8 o'clock lecture. I'd sit in the back row with a coffee I couldn't really afford, trying to focus while my body screamed for more sleep. After classes, I'd grab whatever cheap food I could find, usually ramen or a $1 menu item, and head to the bookstore. The bookstore job was actually one of the better ones. My supervisor, Mrs. Chen, was a kind woman in her 60s who noticed immediately that I was struggling. She'd let me eat my lunch in the back room during slow periods and never complained when I used my breaks to study. You work too hard, she told me one afternoon in late September, finding me hunched over a biology textbook during my 15-minute break. "I have to," I said simply. She looked at me with such pity that I had to look away. I didn't want pity. I wanted to succeed. The library work-study was quiet, which was good for studying. But the fluorescent lights gave me headaches, and by Friday afternoon I was so exhausted that I'd sometimes zone out while re-shelving books, forgetting where I was or what I was doing. The coffee shop was the worst. The manager, Derek, was a 30-something failed musician who seemed to take pleasure in making the job as difficult as possible. He'd schedule me for the closing shift, which meant I wouldn't leave until 12:30 or 1 in the morning. Then I'd walk back to my dorm in the dark, clutching my pepper spray, fighting to keep my eyes open. I'd get back to my room around 1:15, and then I'd have to do homework. Most nights, I didn't get to bed until 3 or 4 in the morning. Then the alarm would go off at 6:30, and I'd do it all over again. By October, I was running on 4 hours of sleep a night, and losing weight I couldn't afford to lose. My roommate, Jessica, was a sweet girl from California who seemed genuinely concerned about me. "Rachel, you look terrible," she said one morning, catching me as I stumbled out of bed. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I lied, pulling on yesterday's jeans because I hadn't had time to do laundry. "You're not fine. You work all the time. You never come to any of the dorm activities. You never hang out with anyone." "I don't have time to hang out. Everyone has to make time for friends," Jessica insisted. "You're going to burn out." She was right, but I couldn't admit it. I couldn't slow down. If I slowed down, I'd fail. If I failed, my parents would be right about me. Meanwhile, Claire was thriving. I saw her around campus sometimes, always surrounded by friends, always smiling. She joined a sorority. She went to football games. She studied abroad planning sessions. She did all the things I'd imagined doing when I pictured college. The first time we ran into each other was in early October, outside the student union. She was with a group of her sorority sisters, all of them dressed in matching T-shirts for some charity event. "Rachel," she called out, her face lighting up. She ran over and hugged me. I stood stiffly in her embrace, too tired to return it properly. "Oh my gosh, I've been trying to text you," she said, pulling back to look at me. Her smile faltered. Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "You've lost weight." "I've been busy. Too busy to text your sister back." There was hurt in her voice. I felt a flash of anger, hot and sharp. "Yes, Claire, too busy. Some of us have to work 3 jobs to be here." Her face fell. "Rachel, I have to go." I cut her off. "I have a shift." I walked away before she could say anything else, before I could see the pity in her eyes that matched Mrs. Chen's, that matched Jessica's, that I was beginning to see in every mirror I passed. November brought my first real crisis. I got sick, really sick. Some kind of flu that went around campus. Everyone got it, but most people could stay in bed for a few days and recover. I couldn't afford to miss work. I couldn't afford to miss class. I pushed through it. I went to my 8 a.m. lecture with a fever of 101. I worked my bookstore shift while coughing so hard I thought I might pass out. I served coffee while my hands shook and my vision blurred. On the 3rd day, I collapsed. I was in the coffee shop, reaching up to grab a bag of beans from the top shelf, and the next thing I knew I was on the floor with Derek standing over me, looking annoyed rather than concerned. "You can't work like this," he said. "Go home. I need the hours." I whispered. "Go home." Mrs. Chen from the bookstore came to get me. She'd heard somehow, maybe Derek had called her. I never found out. She drove me back to my dorm, helped me up the stairs, and tucked me into bed like I was a child. "You're gonna rest for 3 days," she said firmly. "Doctor's orders." "I'm not going to a doctor. I can't afford." "Then my orders. 3 days, Rachel. If you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to work at all." I slept for almost 18 hours straight. When I woke up, there was a care package on my desk: soup, crackers, juice, cold medicine. A note in handwriting I didn't recognize said, "From your sister. She's worried about you." I ate the soup and threw the note away. Those 3 days of rest meant 3 days without pay. It meant falling behind in my classes. It meant burning through the tiny emergency fund I'd built up. But Mrs. Chen was right. If I hadn't rested, I would have ended up in the hospital, which would have been far worse. When I dragged myself back to classes and work, I felt like I'd aged years. I was only 18, but I felt ancient. While my classmates talked about parties and games and normal college things, I calculated how many shifts I needed to cover next month's rent, how much I could afford to spend on groceries, whether I could skip buying the textbook for my elective class and just share with someone else. The only bright spot was my academics. Despite everything, despite the exhaustion, despite working 60 hours a week on top of a full course load, I was maintaining a 3.8 GPA. I didn't have time to not understand the material. I had to absorb it quickly, efficiently, perfectly. Every lecture was precious because I didn't have time to learn things later. My professor started to notice. In my introduction to psychology class, Professor Martinez called me aside after class one day in early December. "Rachel," she said, "I wanted to talk to you about your work. Your papers are exceptional. Your exam scores are the highest in the class." "Thank you," I said, already mentally calculating whether I had time for this conversation before my bookstore shift. "I also wanted to ask if you're okay," she continued. "I notice you always look exhausted. You've fallen asleep twice during lectures." My face burned with shame. "I'm sorry. It won't happen again." "I'm not scolding you," she said gently. "I'm concerned. Are you working? 3 jobs?" Her eyebrows rose. 3. While carrying a full course load, I have to. Professor Martinez studied me for a long moment. "Do your parents know how much you're struggling?" I laughed, a bitter sound. "They know I'm working my way through school. They think it builds character." "I see." Something in her expression shifted, hardened slightly. "Well, I want you to know that you're doing remarkable work. Truly remarkable. And if you ever need a reference or help finding additional scholarships, please come to me." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. As I walked to the bookstore, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. A small flicker of pride. I was surviving. More than surviving. I was succeeding academically despite everything. That first semester ended with me earning a 3.8 GPA while working an average of 55 hours per week. I went home for Christmas break and slept for almost 3 days straight. My parents seemed surprised by how thin I'd gotten, how tired I looked. "College is harder than you expected?" Dad asked over dinner. "College is exactly what I expected," I said flatly. "Working 3 jobs while going to school full time is hard." Mom frowned. "You don't have to work 3 jobs, Rachel. You could have just gone to community college like we suggested." "I'm at state," I said. "Same as Claire. And I'm doing well." Claire, who had been quiet throughout the meal, suddenly spoke up. "She made Dean's List, Mom. I saw it posted." My parents looked at me with something like surprise. "Well, that's wonderful," Mom said, but she sounded uncertain, as if my success somehow didn't fit the narrative they'd constructed. I finished that Christmas dinner and went back to my childhood room, where I'd written my first plan of attack back in April. I sat on my bed and made a promise to myself I would keep going. I would keep succeeding, and someday, somehow, they would see what they'd done. I just had to survive 3.5 more years. Would you like me to proceed with Chapter 3? J'éprouve CR3T breaking point. Sophomore year started with a small miracle. I won a scholarship, $1,500 from a local business association. It wasn't much, but it meant I could cut back to 2 jobs instead of 3. I quit the coffee shop and felt like I could breathe for the first time in a year. I kept the bookstore job and the library work study. Mrs. Chen had become something of a guardian angel to me. She started, accidentally, ordering extra sandwiches for lunch and offering them to me. She'd find reasons to give me additional hours during busy periods, which meant extra money. She never made a big deal of it, never made me feel like charity. "You remind me of my daughter," she told me once. She worked her way through school too. Now she's a doctor. That became my mantra on hard days. She's a doctor now. Meaning this struggle was temporary. Meaning there was a light at the end of this tunnel. Professor Martinez became another unexpected ally. She hired me as her research assistant during sophomore year, a paid position that looked good on my resume and gave me valuable experience. We'd spend hours in her office, analyzing data for her studies on adolescent psychology and family dynamics. "You have a gift for this," she told me one afternoon. "Have you thought about graduate school?" "I can't afford to think about graduate school," I said honestly. "I'm still trying to afford undergraduate." She looked at me thoughtfully. "There are funded programs, Rachel. Programs that would pay you to get your PhD. You should keep your options open." The idea seemed impossible. Me, with a PhD? But I tucked it away in my heart like a secret hope. Despite having one less job, I was still exhausted all the time. Still eating ramen more than real food. Still wearing clothes from high school because I couldn't afford new ones. But my GPA remained high, 3.85 by the end of first semester sophomore year. Claire, meanwhile, continued to flourish. She'd been elected to a leadership position in her sorority. She studied abroad in Italy during spring semester. A trip our parents paid for, naturally. She posted pictures on social media. Claire in front of the Colosseum, Claire eating gelato in Florence, Claire laughing with her new international friends. I tried not to look at the pictures, but Jessica, my roommate, would show them to me anyway. Your sister is living her best life? Jessica said one evening, scrolling through Claire's Instagram. Good for her, I said, not looking up from my textbook. Rachel, you know you could talk to your parents, right? Tell them how hard this is for you. They know? Do they though? I slammed my book shut harder than I intended. Jessica, they made a choice. They chose her. Nothing I say is going to change that. She looked at me sadly. That's really messed up. Yes, I agreed. It is. The spring semester of sophomore year brought a new challenge. Claire wanted to reconnect. She started showing up at the bookstore during my shifts, wanting to grab coffee or catch up. I made excuses. I was busy. I had homework. I had another shift. Finally, in March, she cornered me outside my dorm. Rachel, please, she said. We need to talk? I don't have time. Make time. Her voice cracked. You're my sister. You won't answer my texts. You avoid me on campus. You won't even look at me during the rare times we're home at the same time. I miss you. Something in me softened slightly. Despite everything, I did miss her too. We'd been close once. Fine, I said. 20 minutes? There's a bench over there. We sat down and for a moment neither of us spoke. I hate this, Claire said finally. I hate what Mom and Dad did. I hate that they chose me. I told them it wasn't fair, but they wouldn't listen. When did you tell them? Lots of times. At Christmas, I told them they needed to help you too. That you were working yourself to death? What did they say? She looked down at her hands. Dad said you were learning valuable life lessons. Mom said you seemed to be doing fine on your own. They don't see it, Rachel. Or they don't want to see it. And you? I asked. What do you see? I see my sister who's exhausted all the time, who's lost 20 pounds, who doesn't smile anymore, who's missing out on everything college is supposed to be. Tears were streaming down her face now. And I feel so guilty. I'm having this amazing experience, and you're suffering. And it's because of me? It's not because of you? I said and I meant it. It's because of them. They made this choice. But I'm benefiting from it? Yes, you are. I looked at her directly. Claire, I can't be around you right now. It's too hard. Every time I see you happy, living this carefree college life, I think about what I could have had. What they decided I didn't deserve. It's not your fault, but I can't do this. I can't pretend we're okay when we're not. What can I do? She asked desperately. Nothing. There's nothing you can do. Just live your life. Enjoy what they gave you. Make it worth it. I stood up and walked away, leaving her crying on that bench. It felt cruel, but it was necessary. I couldn't carry her guilt on top of everything else I was carrying. Junior year arrived, and with it, a new development. Professor Martinez submitted one of my research papers to a national undergraduate research competition. I didn't even know she'd done it until she called me into her office in October. You won? She said, beaming. Won what? The Peterson Award for Undergraduate Research Excellence. $5,000 and publication in the journal. I stared at her, unable to process the words. $5,000. Rachel, do you understand what this means? This is incredibly prestigious. This goes on your resume, your grad school applications, assuming you decide to pursue that path. And the money is yours, no strings attached. I burst into tears right there in her office. Mrs. Chen brought me tissues and hugged me while I sobbed. $5,000 meant I could cut back on hours. It meant I could buy groceries without counting every penny. It meant I could breathe. You earned this, Professor Martinez said firmly. You are brilliant, Rachel. Don't ever forget that. When I told my parents about the award during our weekly phone call, a 15-minute obligation I'd maintained despite everything, their response was muted. That's nice, Mom said. Ness, I repeated. It's a national award. Only 5 students in the entire country won it. Well, we're proud of you, Dad said, but he sounded distracted. Hey, did we tell you Claire made Phi Beta Kappa? And there it was. Even my achievements had to be compared to hers, had to be overshadowed. I have to go, I said. I have work. I hung up before they could say anything else. That night, I sat in my dorm room and let myself feel the full weight of what the past 2.5 years had cost me. I'd missed out on friendships, on relationships, on experiences. I'd damaged my health with stress and lack of sleep and poor nutrition. I'd grown hard in ways that scared me sometimes. But I'd also proven something. I was succeeding, really succeeding, without their help. The award ceremony was in November. Professor Martinez insisted I attend. even though it meant missing a day of work. The ceremony was in Chicago, and my research paper was published in a respected journal. I stood on a stage and received my award from the president of the National Psychology Association. I took a picture of myself holding the award and sent it to my parents with no caption. My mom texted back, "Wonderful, your father and I are so proud." Claire texted, "You're amazing. I always knew you were." I turned off my phone and allowed myself to feel proud. Not for them, but for me. Senior year approached with the weight of endings and beginnings. I had one more year to survive. One more year of juggling work and school. One more year of proving myself, but I'd made it this far. I'd survived 3 years of a schedule that would have broken most people. My GPA was 3.87. I'd won a national award. I'd been invited to apply for prestigious graduate programs. I was going to make it. And when I walked across that graduation stage, I was going to do it knowing I'd earned every single step. What I didn't know, what I couldn't possibly have known, was that graduation day would bring a revelation that would change everything. That all of this struggle, all of this pain, all of this perseverance would culminate in a moment that would finally make my parents see the truth. But that was still months away. For now, I just had to keep going. One more year. I could do one more year. Would you like me to proceed with Chapter 4? J'approuve apte R4 teach finals each senior year began with both exhaustion and excitement. This was it, my last year. The finish line was in sight. I'd managed to save some of the award money, which meant I could finally afford to live off campus in a tiny studio apartment. No more communal bathrooms. No more roommates asking questions I didn't have energy to answer. Just me, a small space that was mine, and the blessed quiet I'd been craving for 3 years. The apartment was in an older building, nothing fancy. The heater rattled, the kitchen was barely bigger than a closet, and the walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbors' conversations. But it had a door I could lock, a bed that was just mine, and a sense of independence that felt like luxury after 3 years in the dorms. I was still working 2 jobs, the bookstore and Professor Martinez's research assistant position. I'd cut the library work study when I moved off campus. It was still grueling, but compared to freshman year, it felt almost manageable. I'd learned how to survive on little sleep, how to maximize every minute, how to push through when my body begged me to stop. Professor Martinez had become my mentor in every sense of the word. She was helping me apply for graduate programs, fully funded PhD programs in psychology where I'd actually be paid to pursue my doctorate. "You're an excellent candidate," she told me in September as we reviewed my application materials. "Your GPA, your research experience, your publication, the Peterson Award, Rachel, you're going to have options." Options. What a strange concept. For 4 years I'd felt like I had no options, only obligations and necessities. Now suddenly doors were opening. "I never thought I'd be able to afford graduate school," I admitted. "These programs pay you," she reminded me. "Not much, but enough to live on. You'd be a teaching assistant and research assistant. You'd work hard, but Rachel," she smiled, "when have you ever not worked hard?" I submitted applications to 8 programs. Each application fee felt like a luxury I could barely afford, but Professor Martinez insisted. "This is an investment in your future," she said. Meanwhile, Claire and I had settled into a strange sort of truce. We weren't close anymore, that damage felt permanent, but we were civil. She'd stopped trying to force conversations, stopped showing up at my work. We'd see each other occasionally on campus and exchange brief pleasantries before moving on. I knew from Mom's phone calls that Claire was job hunting, applying to marketing firms in different cities. Our parents were helping her, of course, paying for her professional wardrobe, funding trips to interviews, offering to cover her first month's rent wherever she ended up. I tried not to feel bitter about it. I mostly failed. In October, something unexpected happened. I was shelving books at the bookstore when I overheard 2 administrators talking in the next aisle. They didn't know I was there. "We're announcing the Chancellor's Medal recipient next month," one of them said. "Oh, who got it this year?" "Rachel Morgan." The selection committee was unanimous. Her story is incredible, working multiple jobs all 4 years, maintaining nearly a 4.0, winning the Peterson Award, stellar recommendations from her professors. She embodies everything the medal is supposed to represent. I don't think I know her. You wouldn't. She keeps a low profile. But apparently she's overcome significant obstacles. Her faculty recommender wrote that she's one of the most resilient students she's ever taught. They moved away, and I stood frozen in the aisle, a book clutched in my shaking hands. The Chancellor's Medal, It was the university's highest honor, given to one graduating senior each year. The recipient was announced at graduation and received their diploma directly from the chancellor. There was a ceremony, a speech, recognition in front of the entire graduating class and all their families. And apparently, I'd won it. I made it through the rest of my shift in a daze. When I got home that night, I pulled up the university website and read about the chancellor's medal. The award came with a $10,000 prize and a guarantee of admission to the university's graduate programs with full funding. $10,000. Full funding for graduate school. I sat on my secondhand couch and cried, deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to pull out 4 years of accumulated pain and exhaustion and determination. I'd done it. Despite everything, I'd done it. The official notification came a week later. A formal letter from the chancellor's office. The medal would be presented at graduation. I would be asked to give a brief acceptance speech. My parents would receive a special invitation to sit in a reserved section. For the first time in 4 years, I felt something like vindication. I didn't tell my parents right away. I wanted to hold this close, to savor it before they could somehow diminish it or compare it to whatever Claire had achieved. But I did tell Professor Martinez, who hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. I knew it, she said. I nominated you, you know. Wrote you the longest recommendation letter I've ever written. Rachel, you deserve this. You deserve all of it. Mrs. Chen cried when I told her. My girl, she said, squeezing my hands. I'm so proud of you. So proud. November and December passed in a blur of final projects and exams. I was taking 6 classes. A deliberately heavy load because I wanted to prove I could. My GPA for the semester hovered at 3.9. I was on track to graduate with a cumulative GPA of 3.88. I finally told my parents about the chancellor's medal during our Christmas phone call. There was a long pause after I explained what it was. That's wonderful, Rachel, Mom said finally. We'll definitely be there. Both of us. Dad added. Wouldn't miss it. Claire's graduating too, of course, Mom continued. She's got 3 job offers already. Always both. Never just me. I'm giving a speech, I said, at graduation, in front of everyone. A speech. Dad sounded uncertain. What kind of speech? An acceptance speech. For the medal. About my journey through college. Another pause. I could practically hear them calculating what that meant, what I might say. Well, that's an honor, Mom said carefully. We hung up shortly after. I imagined them sitting in their living room, finally beginning to understand what the past 4 years had actually been like for me. Finally beginning to realize that their character building decision had consequences they'd never fully considered. Spring semester of senior year was bittersweet. These were my last classes, my last shifts at the bookstore, my last research meetings with Professor Martinez. The university felt different, smaller somehow, more manageable now that I knew I was leaving. I got acceptance letters from 6 of the 8 PhD programs I'd applied to. 6 fully funded offers to pursue my doctorate. Professor Martinez opened a bottle of sparkling cider in her office, and we toasted to the future. You did this, she told me. You took an impossible situation and you not only survived it, you excelled. That's extraordinary. Rachel, I applied to programs far from home. Boston, Seattle, Chicago. I wanted distance. I wanted a fresh start where nobody knew my story, where I could just be a graduate student without the weight of the past 4 years following me. I chose the program in Boston. Strong faculty, excellent research opportunities, and 3,000 miles from my parents. As graduation approached, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Pride, definitely. Relief that this ordeal was almost over. But also anger, deep, persistent anger at my parents for putting me through this, for favoring Claire so blatantly, for never once offering to help even as they watched me struggle. The anger had been building for 4 years, and I knew that graduation day would be a reckoning. 1 week before graduation, Professor Martinez asked me to meet her in her office. When I arrived, she had a serious expression on her face. Rachel, I want to talk to you about your speech, she said. Okay, you have an opportunity here, a platform. The entire graduating class will be there, along with all their families, all the faculty and administrators. You could use that moment to tell your truth. I'm planning to. She nodded slowly. I thought you might be. I just want to make sure you're prepared for the consequences. Your parents will be there. Your sister will be there. I know. And you're okay with that? I thought about it, really thought about it. Was I okay with publicly acknowledging what they'd done? Was I okay with potentially embarrassing them, hurting them, making them face their choices in front of hundreds of witnesses? Yes, I said finally. I'm okay with it. They need to hear this, And maybe other students need to hear it too. Students who are struggling, who feel overlooked, who think they're not enough. They need to know that you can survive this. Professor Martinez smiled. Then write your truth, Rachel, and don't hold back. I spent the next week crafting my speech. I wrote and rewrote, trying to find the balance between honesty and grace, between calling out injustice and offering hope. It was the hardest thing I'd ever written. The night before graduation, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my small apartment, looking at the cap and gown hanging on my closet door, thinking about the journey that had brought me here. 4 years ago, I'd been a 17-year-old girl whose parents told her she wasn't worth investing in. Now I was a woman with a degree, a national award, a publication, and a fully funded path to a doctorate. Tomorrow I would walk across that stage. Tomorrow I would tell my story. Tomorrow everything would change. I just didn't know how much. Would you like me to proceed with Chapter 5? J'éprouve Chapter 5. Grurai du Tian Dawai. The morning of graduation day, I woke up at dawn even though the ceremony wasn't until 2 in the afternoon. I couldn't sleep. Nervous energy coursed through my body, making my hands shake as I made coffee in my tiny kitchen. This was it. The day I'd been working toward for 4 years. The day that would mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I showered and dressed carefully. A simple navy dress under my graduation gown, the nicest outfit I owned. I'd bought it from a thrift store specifically for this day, spending more than I should have because I wanted to look put together, professional, worthy of the honor I was receiving. My phone buzzed with texts. Jessica, my former roommate, wishing me luck. Chen, telling me she'd be in the audience cheering for me. Professor Martinez, reminding me to speak slowly and clearly during my speech. Nothing from my parents or Claire yet. They were driving up this morning, probably already on the road. I looked at myself in the mirror, really looked. The girl staring back at me was different from the one who'd arrived on campus 4 years ago. Thinner, yes. More tired around the eyes. But also stronger. Harder, more certain of herself. I put on my cap and gown in my apartment, adjusting the honor cords that marked my academic achievements. The gold cords for my GPA, the special medallion for the Chancellor's Medal that had arrived in the mail last week. My phone rang. It was Claire. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. Rachel, hi. We just got to town. Mom wants to know if you want to have lunch before the ceremony. The idea of sitting through a meal with my parents, making small talk while my stomach churned with anticipation, sounded unbearable, I said. I have to be there early. Chancellor's Medal recipients have a pre-ceremony meeting. This was true, though the meeting was only 30 minutes long. Oh, okay. Claire sounded disappointed. Well, we'll see you there. We're really proud of you, Rachel. Thanks. I hung up before she could say anything else. At noon? Free. I drove to campus for the last time as a student. The parking lot was already filling with families, everyone dressed up, carrying flowers and balloons. I saw parents hugging their graduating children, taking photos, laughing. I walked to the auditorium alone. The pre-ceremony meeting was in a small room behind the stage. There were 5 of us, the Chancellor's Medal recipient, me, the student body president, the valedictorian, the salutatorian, and the faculty speaker. Chancellor Morrison, a dignified woman in her 60s, greeted each of us personally. When she got to me, she took both my hands in hers. Rachel, she said warmly, I've heard so much about you. Your story is truly inspiring. Are you prepared for your speech? Yes, ma'am. Good. We'll introduce you after the diplomas are distributed to the other graduates. You'll receive your diploma directly from me, and then you'll have the podium for your remarks. Take your time. This is your moment. My moment. 4 years in the making. We walked through the logistics, the order of events. Then it was time to line up with the rest of the graduating class. The auditorium was massive, packed with people. I found my place in line, Morgan Rachel, between a girl named Jessica Morrison and a boy named David Nguyen. Neither of them knew me. I'd been invisible for most of my college career, too busy working to make friends. The processional music started. We filed into the auditorium in our caps and gowns, a sea of blue and gold. I scanned the audience as we walked, looking for my parents. I found them in the reserved section up front, the special area for families of award recipients. My father in a suit, my mother in a floral dress, and Claire between them, looking nervous. They saw me and waved. I nodded in acknowledgement, my face neutral. We took our seats, the filling rows and rows of chairs on the floor of the auditorium. The ceremony began with the usual speeches. The dean, the student body president, the faculty representative. I barely heard them. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then came the diploma distribution. Row by row, students walked across the stage, shook the chancellor's hand, received their diploma, posed for a photo, and returned to their seats. It took over an hour. I watched Claire walk across the stage, her smile bright, our parents standing to applaud her. She'd done well here. She'd enjoyed every moment of an experience that had nearly destroyed me. Finally, it was my row's turn. I stood with the others, waiting in line at the stage stairs. My legs felt weak. My hands were trembling. But then I heard Chancellor Morrison's voice boom through the speakers. Before we continue with the diploma distribution, we have a special recognition. Each year, State University awards the Chancellor's Medal to one graduating senior who exemplifies extraordinary achievement in the face of significant obstacles. This year's recipient has distinguished herself not only through academic excellence, but through remarkable perseverance and resilience. The auditorium grew quiet. I saw people in my row looking around, wondering who would be called. This student maintained a GPA of 3.88 while working an average of 50 hours per week throughout her 4 years here. She won the prestigious Peterson Award for Undergraduate Research Excellence. She has been accepted to multiple fully funded doctoral programs, and she did all of this while financing her education entirely on her own, without family support. I saw my mother's face in the audience. She'd gone pale. My father's jaw was tight. Claire's eyes were wide. They were beginning to understand. It is my great honor to present the Chancellor's Medal to Rachel Morgan. The auditorium erupted in applause. I walked up the stage stairs on shaking legs. Chancellor Morrison was smiling, holding the medal, a heavy bronze disc on a blue ribbon. She placed it around my neck and handed me my diploma. We shook hands while cameras flashed. Then she gestured to the podium. This was it, my moment to speak. I walked to the microphone, looking out at hundreds of faces, my classmates in their caps and gowns, their families in the stands, my own family in the front row, looking stunned. I pulled my speech from my pocket, unfolded it with trembling hands, and began to speak. Thank you, Chancellor Morrison, for this incredible honor. 4 years ago, I arrived at State University with a dream and very little else. I'd like to tell you about those 4 years, because I think it's important for people to understand that success doesn't always come with support. I looked directly at my parents. When my sister and I were both accepted to State, my parents told us they could only afford to pay for one of us. They chose my sister. They told me she deserved it more, that she had more potential, that I would have to find another way. I heard murmurs in the audience. My mother had her hand over her mouth. My father was staring straight ahead, his face rigid. So I found another way. I took out maximum student loans. I worked 3 jobs my freshman year, the bookstore, the library, and a coffee shop. I worked 60 hours a week on top of a full course load. I slept 4 hours a night. I lost weight I couldn't afford to lose. I got sick and kept working anyway. I collapsed from exhaustion and went back to work the next day. My voice was steady now, growing stronger with each word. I missed out on friendships, on experiences, on the college life that everyone talks about. While my classmates went to parties and football games, I was serving coffee at midnight or shelving books or writing research papers during my breaks at work. I saw Professor Martinez in the audience, tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Chen was crying too. But I also learned something important. I learned that my worth isn't determined by other people's belief in me. I learned that I am capable of far more than anyone gave me credit for. I learned that resilience isn't just about surviving, it's about refusing to let circumstances define your potential. I looked at my classmates. Some of you are struggling too. Maybe not in the same way, but you're fighting your own battles. Maybe your family doesn't support your dreams. Maybe you're working to pay for school. Maybe you feel overlooked or underestimated or not good enough. I want you to know something: you are enough. Your worth doesn't come from someone else's investment in you. It comes from your investment in yourself. The applause started then, building like a wave. Students were standing, cheering. I saw people wiping their eyes. I held up my hand, signaling I wasn't finished. I want to thank the people who did believe in me. Professor Martinez, who became my mentor and advocate. Mrs. Chen, who made sure I ate and gave me extra hours when I needed them. The scholarship committees who took a chance on me. Everyone who saw my struggle and offered help instead of judgment. I paused, looking at my parents one last time. And to my parents, who are here today, thank you for teaching me that I don't need your approval to succeed. Thank you for showing me that I'm stronger than you believed. I hope that watching me receive this medal, knowing that I earned every single step of this journey without your help, teaches you something important about underestimating people." The auditorium exploded. The applause was deafening. Students were on their feet, shouting, cheering. I saw my father's face. Red. Humiliated. My mother was openly crying. Claire had her head in her hands. But I also saw hundreds of other faces, students who understood, who felt seen, who were crying because someone had finally said what they'd been feeling. Chancellor Morrison came to the podium, placing a hand on my shoulder. "Thank you, Rachel," she said into the microphone, "for your courage, your honesty, and your inspiration to us all." She handed me a check, the $10,000 prize that came with the medal. I held it up, showing it to the audience, and the cheering grew even louder. I walked off that stage feeling lighter than I had in 4 years. I'd told my truth. I'd exposed what they'd done, and I'd done it with the medal around my neck and my diploma in my hand, proof that I'd succeeded despite them, not because of them. The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. More diplomas, more speeches, the turning of the tassels. Then it was over. We were graduates. I filed out with my class, but I knew what was waiting for me outside. I knew my parents would be there, and I knew, finally, that I was ready to face them. Would you like me to proceed with Chapter 6? J'approuve Chapter 6 Oming. The moment I stepped outside the auditorium, I was surrounded by people. Classmates I barely knew were hugging me, thanking me for my speech. Strangers were taking photos. Professor Martinez pushed through the crowd and wrapped me in a fierce embrace. "That was perfect," she whispered. "Absolutely perfect." Mrs. Chen was there too, pulling me into a hug that smelled like the bookstore, paper and coffee and safety. "I'm so proud of you," she said. So proud. But through the crowd I could see them. My parents standing apart from the celebration, their faces ashen. Claire was with them, looking torn between coming to me and staying with them. I took a deep breath and excused myself from the well-wishers. It was time. I walked toward my family, and the crowd seemed to sense something important was happening. People moved aside, creating a path. By the time I reached my parents, we had an audience of hundreds, though they were giving us space. My father spoke first. His voice was tight, controlled. "Rachel, that was true," I interrupted. Every word of it was true. My mother's mascara was running down her face. "You humiliated us," she said, her voice breaking. "In front of everyone. How could you do that?" "How could I?" I repeated, my voice rising. "How could you? How could you look at your 2 daughters and decide one was worth investing in and one wasn't? How could you watch me work myself into the ground for 4 years and not once offer to help? We thought you were doing fine," Dad said weakly. "Fine," I laughed, a harsh sound. I collapsed from exhaustion freshman year. I lost 25 pounds because I couldn't afford to eat properly. I developed anxiety and insomnia that I still deal with. Does that sound fine to you? "We didn't know it was that bad," Mom protested. "You didn't want to know," I shot back. "You made your choice, and you didn't want to face what that choice actually meant. You wanted to believe I was learning character or independence, or whatever story you told yourselves to justify favoring Claire." Claire stepped forward then, tears streaming down her face. "Rachel, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I mean, I knew you were working, but I didn't know it was that bad. I should have." "You should have what?" I asked, but my voice was gentler with her. "It wasn't your fault, Claire. You were a kid too. They made this choice, not you." "But I benefited from it," she said. "I got everything, the full college experience, study abroad, no debt. And you got nothing." "I got something," I said, touching the medal around my neck. "I got to learn exactly who I am when everything is stripped away. I got to learn that I'm capable of things I never imagined. I got resilience. I got strength. I got proof that I don't need their approval or support to succeed." My father's face was red now, anger mixing with shame. "We were doing what we thought was best. We had limited resources. You had enough for one child's education." I interrupted. "You could have split it. Paid half for each of us. Helped both your daughters instead of choosing one. But you didn't. You decided Claire was the better investment." "She had better grades," he said defensively, "by less than a point. And you know what? My college GPA was higher than hers. I maintained a 3.88 while working 50 hours a week. What does that tell you about my potential? About what I could have achieved if you'd believed in me?" My mother was crying harder now. "We thought we were being practical. We thought—" "You thought I was less than," I said quietly. And you looked at your daughters and you decided one deserved support, and one didn't. One deserved to have her dreams funded, and one should struggle alone. Do you have any idea what that does to a person? To know your own parents think you're not worth investing in. That's not what we thought. Mom insisted. Then what did you think? Explain it to me. Because from where I stood, the message was crystal clear: she deserved it, but you didn't. The silence that followed was deafening. People were watching us, some openly crying, others looking uncomfortable. I saw parents in the crowd holding their own children closer, perhaps reevaluating their own choices. Finally, my mother spoke, her voice small. We made a mistake. Yes, I agreed. You did. A huge, painful mistake that shaped 4 years of my life. A mistake that damaged our relationship, probably permanently. A mistake that taught me I can't rely on you. Rachel, please, Dad said. We love you. Love isn't just words, I said. Love is action. Love is support. Love is believing in someone even when they're not perfect. You showed me what conditional love looks like. You showed me that your support comes with strings attached, with judgments about who deserves what. Claire stepped closer to me. What can they do? She asked. What can any of us do to make this right? I looked at her, then at my parents. I don't know if you can make it right. The damage is done. I spent 4 years proving myself to people who should have believed in me from the start. 4 years that I can't get back. 4 years where I missed out on being young because I had to be strong instead. We'll pay back your loans, Dad said suddenly. All of them. However much you borrowed. We'll pay it off. I shook my head. It's too late for that. I don't want your money now. I wanted your faith in me then. I wanted you to look at me and see someone worth supporting. Money now doesn't erase what you did. It doesn't erase how you made me feel. Then what do you want? Mom asked desperately. I thought about it. What did I want? An apology, an acknowledgement. For them to understand what they'd done. I want you to think about this, I said finally. Really think about it. Think about what you taught me. Think about what your choice said about how you value your daughters. Think about whether love should ever be conditional like that. And then I want you to make sure you never do something like this to anyone else. If you have grandchildren someday, if you have nieces or nephews, if you have anyone in your life who looks up to you, I want you to remember this day and do better. Will you forgive us? Mom whispered. Someday maybe, I said honestly, but not today. Today I just need you to understand what you did. Today I need you to sit with the discomfort of knowing that hundreds of people just heard about how you failed your daughter. That's your consequence. Public humiliation, just like you thought I was humiliating you. I turned to Claire. You and I, we're okay. Or we will be. This wasn't your fault. She hugged me tightly, both of us crying now. I love you, she whispered. I'm so proud of you. You're the strongest person I know. I love you too, I said, and I meant it. I pulled back and looked at my parents one more time. I'm moving to Boston in August. I'm starting my PhD program. I got a full scholarship. They're paying me to go to school. Imagine that. I'll be studying family dynamics and resilience. Maybe I'll write about this someday, help other kids who feel overlooked by their parents. Rachel, Dad started, but I held up my hand. I need space right now. I need time, maybe in a few months. Or a year, we can talk again. Maybe eventually I'll be ready to rebuild something with you. But right now, I just need to celebrate this achievement with people who actually supported me through it. I walked away from them then, back toward Professor Martinez and Mrs. Chen, and the dozens of classmates who were waiting to congratulate me. As I walked, I felt the weight of the medal around my neck, the diploma in my hand, and something else, something lighter. Freedom. I was free from needing their approval, free from proving myself to them, free from the little girl who'd sat in that living room 4 years ago and heard that she wasn't deserving. Behind me, I heard my mother sobbing. Part of me wanted to turn back, to comfort her, to make it okay. But the stronger part of me, the part that had survived 3 jobs and 60-hour weeks and constant exhaustion, kept walking. They'd made their choice 4 years ago. Now I was making mine. Professor Martinez handed me a glass of champagne someone had produced. To Rachel, she announced to the gathering crowd, "Who just gave the bravest speech I've ever heard?" To Rachel, dozens of voices echoed. I raised my glass, surrounded by people who had chosen to support me, and allowed myself to feel joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy at what I'd accomplished. The party moved to a nearby restaurant that Professor Martinez had reserved. She'd apparently been planning this celebration for weeks. There were 40 people there, Professors, staff from the bookstore and library, classmates from my research seminars, even some of the scholarship committee members who'd funded parts of my education. Claire showed up too, slipping in quietly. She sat next to me, and we held hands under the table like we used to when we were kids. Mom and Dad left, she told me quietly. They drove back home. Mom couldn't stop crying. I said and meant it. Maybe she should cry. Maybe they both should. They're devastated, Claire said. But Rachel, I think you got through to them. I think they finally understand. Maybe, I said, but it's too late. The damage is done. Is it though? Claire asked. You're amazing, you're successful. You proved them wrong in every possible way. Maybe that's worth something? The success is worth everything, I agreed. But I earned it despite them, not because of them. That's what they need to understand. They don't get to take credit for this. They don't get to bask in my achievements when they didn't believe in them. Claire nodded slowly. Fair enough. For what it's worth, I'm going to talk to them. Really talk to them. They need to hear from me too about how messed up this was. Thank you, I said. The party went late into the evening. People shared stories, gave toasts, and celebrated not just graduation but survival. Several students approached me privately to share their own stories of struggling through college, of feeling unsupported by family, of working multiple jobs to make ends meet. Thank you for saying what you said, a young woman told me, tears in her eyes. My parents act like my three-part-time jobs are no big deal. Like everyone does it. Hearing you talk about how hard it was, it made me feel less alone. That was worth it, all of it, the speech, the confrontation, the pain of finally speaking my truth. If it helped even one person feel less alone, it was worth it. By midnight, the restaurant was closing and the party was winding down. Professor Martinez hugged me one last time. You're going to do amazing things in Boston, she said. And Rachel, I'm honored to have been part of your journey. You saved me, I told her honestly. I don't know if I would have made it without you. You would have, she said firmly. You're stronger than you know. But I'm glad I could help. I drove back to my apartment alone. Still wearing my cap and gown, the metal heavy around my neck. When I got inside, I sat on my couch and finally let myself feel everything. The triumph, the anger, the grief, the relief. I'd done it. I'd survived. I'd succeeded. And I'd told my truth in the most public way possible. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be conversations to have, relationships to navigate, decisions to make about how much contact I wanted with my parents going forward. But tonight, I just sat in my small apartment, the apartment I'd paid for with money I'd earned, and let myself feel proud. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to myself. An echo of the letter I'd written 4 years ago. You did it. You proved them wrong. You proved yourself right. You are enough. You always were. Then I set my phone aside, looked at the metal gleaming in the lamplight, and smiled. The weeks after graduation were strange. The story of my speech went viral. Someone had recorded it on their phone and posted it online. Within days, it had millions of views. News outlets picked it up. I was invited to talk shows, podcasts, education conferences. I declined most of them. I'd said what I needed to say. I didn't need to become the poster child for parental favoritism or student struggle. I just wanted to move forward. But the response was overwhelming. My email inbox filled with messages from students, parents, educators, people sharing their own stories, thanking me for my honesty, asking for advice. One message stood out. It was from a mother. I watched your graduation speech and I cried for an hour. I have 2 daughters. I've been saving for their college education, but I don't have enough for both. I was planning to do exactly what your parents did, pay for the one with better grades. Your speech made me realize what a terrible mistake that would have been. Instead, I'm going to split the money equally and help both my girls apply for scholarships. Thank you for saving me from making the same choice your parents did. Thank you for saving my relationship with my daughters. I read that message 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Maybe my pain could prevent someone else's. Maybe that made it mean something. My parents tried to reach out several times in those first weeks. Phone calls I didn't answer. Emails I didn't open. A letter that arrived at my apartment, addressed in my mother's handwriting. I left it sealed on my kitchen counter for a week before finally opening it. Dear Rachel, I don't know if you'll read this, but I need to try. Your father and I have done nothing but talk about your speech since graduation. We've replayed every decision we made, every conversation we had. And we've come to realize something painful. We were wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. We told ourselves we were being practical, that we were making a smart financial decision, that you would be fine because you were capable and independent. But the truth we didn't want to face, is that we played favorites. We believed Claire had more potential, and that belief shaped everything. Watching you on that stage, seeing what you accomplished despite our lack of support, hearing the pain in your voice, it broke something in us. We failed you. We failed as parents in the most fundamental way. We made you feel less than, and there's no excuse for that. We want to make it right, though we know we can't undo the past 4 years. We've set up an account to pay off all your student loans. We know you said you don't want our money, but please, let us do this. It won't make up for what we did, but it will at least remove the financial burden we should have helped carry from the start. We love you, we're proud of you, and we're so sorry. Mom, I set the letter down and sat at my kitchen table for a long time. They'd set up an account for my loans. I checked my student loan balance, $48,000, 4 years of maximum federal loans plus some private loans to cover the gaps. It would take me 10 years to pay off, maybe 15. Part of me wanted to refuse, wanted to prove I could do this too, could pay off my own debt without their help. But the practical part of me, the part that had learned to survive, knew that was pride talking. Accepting their money wouldn't erase what they'd done, but it would free me to start my life in Boston without that crushing debt. It would let me focus on my PhD instead of worrying about loan payments. I called Claire. She answered on the first ring. "Oh my God, I've been hoping you'd call." "Hey," I said. "How are you?" "Honestly, struggling. I started my new job in Chicago, but I can't stop thinking about everything." "About you? About what Mom and Dad did?" "Did you know about the letter?" I asked. "The one Mom sent you?" "Yes. She showed it to me before she mailed it." "Rachel, they're devastated. They haven't been the same since graduation." "Good," I said, but without as much venom as before. "They should be." "They should be," Claire agreed. "What they did was inexcusable, but I think they genuinely understand that now. They're trying to make it right." "They offered to pay my loans." "I know. They liquidated their retirement savings to do it." That stopped me. "What?" "Their retirement account. They cashed it out. All of it. Dad said if they'd been willing to sacrifice for my education, they should be willing to sacrifice for yours too. Even if it's late." I felt something shift in my chest. "Claire, they shouldn't have done that." "Maybe not, but they did. They wanted you to know they're serious. That they understand the magnitude of what they did." I was quiet for a long moment. "I got dozens of messages," I said finally. "From parents who were planning to do the same thing Mom and Dad did. They said my speech changed their minds, made them realize they couldn't play favorites like that." "You probably saved a lot of families," Claire said softly. "Maybe. But I couldn't save ours." "Rachel, do you want to save ours?" Did I? That was the question I'd been avoiding. Was I ready to forgive? Was I ready to rebuild? "I don't know," I admitted. "The hurt is still so fresh. Every time I think about those 4 years, about how hard it was, about how many times I almost gave up, I get angry all over again." "That's fair. You have every right to be angry. But," I continued slowly, "I also don't want to carry this anger forever. I don't want to be defined by what they did to me. I survived it. I succeeded despite it. Maybe now I need to figure out how to let it go." "What would that look like?" Claire asked. "I don't know yet. Maybe therapy, maybe time, maybe gradually rebuilding trust. But Claire, I need you to understand, it's never going to be the same. I'm never going to forget what they chose. I'm never going to completely trust that they see me as equal to you." "I understand. And for what it's worth, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure they understand too. Making sure they never take credit for your success. Making sure everyone knows you did this alone. You're a good sister," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You're an amazing sister, and I'm sorry I didn't fight harder for you 4 years ago. You were 18, Claire. It wasn't your responsibility? Maybe not. But I still wish I'd done more." We talked for another hour, really talked, the way we used to before everything got complicated. She told me about her job, her apartment in Chicago. I told her about my preparations for Boston, about the research I'd be doing. By the time we hung up, something felt different. Lighter, maybe. Like the first step toward healing had been taken. A week later, I made a decision. I called my parents. My mother answered, her voice cautious. "Rachel." "Oh, hi, Mom." "Oh, sweetheart, thank you for calling." "We didn't think, we weren't sure if you'd." "I read your letter," I interrupted gently. And I'm accepting your offer to pay the loans." I heard her sob with relief. Thank you. Thank you for letting us do that. But I need you to understand something. I continued. This doesn't fix everything. This doesn't erase the past 4 years. I'm accepting the money because it's practical and because you should have helped from the start. But our relationship, that's going to take time to rebuild. If it can be rebuilt. We understand? Dad's voice came on the line. He must have been listening on another phone. We'll do whatever it takes, Rachel. We'll spend the rest of our lives making this up to you. You can't make it up to me, I said honestly. But you can do better going forward. You can acknowledge what you did. You can make sure no one else makes the same mistake. You can show up for me now, even though you didn't then. Or will, Mom promised. Well, absolutely will. I'm moving to Boston in August. I told them. I'd like you to help me move. Not financially, I can handle that. But I'd like you to be there, to see the apartment, to meet some of my professors. I'd like you to be part of this next chapter, if you're willing to show up as parents who believe in me. We'll be there, Dad said immediately. Whatever you need. We talked for a few more minutes, awkward and careful, testing the boundaries of this new relationship we were trying to build. When we hung up, I felt exhausted but also hopeful. Maybe healing was possible. Maybe not complete healing, but something. August came quickly. I spent the summer working at the bookstore Mrs. Chen had offered to keep me on until I left, and preparing for my move. Professor Martinez helped me find an apartment in Boston near campus. Claire visited twice, helping me sort through my belongings and pack. The day before the move, I stood in my empty apartment, the little studio that had been my sanctuary for a year. I thought about everything that had happened in this space. The late night studying, the tears after particularly hard shifts, the moment I'd opened the letter about the Chancellor's medal. This apartment had witnessed the end of my undergraduate struggle and the beginning of my new life. I ran my hand along the wall, whispered a silent thank you to the space, and locked the door for the last time. My parents arrived the next morning with a rental truck. It was strange seeing them in this context, as helpers, as supporters. We loaded my belongings, mostly in silence, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between us. But when we stopped for lunch at a roadside diner, something shifted. Dad asked about my research interests. Mom wanted to know about my professors, my program. They were asking questions they should have asked 4 years ago, but at least they were asking them now. I'm studying family dynamics, I told them. Specifically, how parental favoritism impacts long-term psychological outcomes. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. Oh, it's important research, I continued. There's not enough literature on how these dynamics affect adult children, how it shapes their relationships, their self-worth, their ability to trust. Will you? Dad started, then stopped. Will we be part of your research? In a way, yes. Anonymously, of course. My own experience informs my interest in the topic. But I'll be studying hundreds of families looking for patterns. I hope your research helps people, Mom said quietly. I hope it helps parents avoid making the mistakes we made. That's the goal. We arrived in Boston late that evening. My new apartment was small but cozy, in an old brownstone with character. My parents helped me unpack, arrange furniture, stock the kitchen. They stayed in a hotel that night, and the next morning, before they left, we had breakfast together. This is a fresh start, I told them over coffee. I'm not saying I forgive everything. I'm not saying it doesn't still hurt. But I'm willing to try to move forward. I'm willing to see if we can build something new. My mother reached across the table and took my hand. That's more than we deserve. Probably, I agreed. But I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me. Because I don't want to carry this anger into my new life. I want to focus on my research, my future, the person I'm becoming. We're so proud of you, Dad said, his voice breaking. I know we don't have the right to be, but we are. You have the right, I said. You're my parents. You just need to remember that pride without support is empty. If you want to be part of my life going forward, you need to show up. You need to invest in me the way you invested in Claire. Not with money anymore, but with belief, with encouragement, with presence. We will, they both promised. After they left, I stood in my new apartment and looked around. This was it, my new beginning, a fully funded PhD program. A research project I was passionate about, and a chance to help other families avoid the pain mine had caused. I pulled out my phone and found that message I'd written to myself on graduation night. I read it again, then added one more line. The best revenge is a life well lived. So live it. Over the next few years, things slowly improved with my parents. They called regularly, not too much. Respecting my boundaries, they visited Boston twice. They sent care packages during finals. They showed up in small, consistent ways that gradually rebuilt trust. Claire and I grew close again. She'd visit Boston, and we'd explore the city together. She became my biggest cheerleader, always sharing my research publications, bragging about her genius sister. My research flourished. I published papers on parental favoritism and its long-term impacts. I spoke at conferences. I worked with families trying to heal from similar dynamics. My dissertation won awards. And through it all, I wore that chancellor's medal to every important presentation, every conference, every defense. A reminder of where I'd come from and what I'd overcome. 5 years after graduation, I was invited back to State University to give the commencement address. I stood on that same stage where I'd told my truth, looking out at a new class of graduates, and I shared what I'd learned. Success isn't about who believes in you, I told them. It's about who you become when no one does. It's about finding strength you didn't know you had. It's about proving to yourself, not to anyone else, that you are capable of extraordinary things. I saw parents in the audience wiping their eyes. I saw students nodding, understanding. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me. She looked exhausted, carrying that bone, deep tiredness I recognized immediately. I'm working 3 jobs, she told me. My parents won't help me. Your story, the one from your graduation, it's kept me going. I wanted to thank you. I hugged her tightly. You're going to make it, I promised. It's going to be hard, but you're going to make it. And someday, you're going to stand somewhere and tell your story, and it's going to help someone else keep going. She was crying now. Did it get easier? With your parents? Eventually, I said honestly. But the most important thing I learned was that I didn't need them to believe in me for me to be successful. I just needed to believe in myself. I'm trying, she whispered. That's all you need to do. Just keep trying. Keep showing up. Keep proving to yourself that you can do this. She left, and I stood there watching the crowd of celebrating families, thinking about my own journey. My parents were there in the audience. They'd driven up to hear me speak. My mother had hugged me before the ceremony, crying, telling me how proud she was. It would never be perfect. The scars from those 4 years would always be there. But we were building something new, a relationship based on honesty and boundaries and hard-won respect. Claire had come too, with her fiancé. After the ceremony, we all went to dinner, a family celebration that felt both strange and right. Remember when you won the Chancellor's Medal? Claire asked over dessert. That speech changed everything? It did, I agreed. It changed me most of all. How so? Her fiancé asked. It taught me that the truth, even when it's painful, is worth speaking. It taught me that my story mattered. It taught me that sometimes you have to break something before you can rebuild it into something better. My father cleared his throat. Rachel, I want to say something. I know we've apologized before, but I need to say it again. What we did to you is unforgivable. The fact that you've let us back into your life at all is more grace than we deserve. Watching you succeed, seeing the incredible person you've become, knowing you did it without our support, it's the proudest and most ashamed I've ever felt simultaneously. Dad, I started. No, let me finish. You are extraordinary. Not because of us, but in spite of us. And I want you to know that we tell everyone, about your achievements. We make sure people understand that you did this on your own. We don't take credit. We won't ever take credit. Thank you, I said softly. That means a lot. My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You were always enough, Rachel. We just couldn't see it. But you saw it. You knew your worth even when we didn't. That's the real achievement. We finished dinner, and as we left the restaurant, I looked at my family, imperfect, scarred, but trying. We were all trying to do better, to be better. Later that night, alone in my Boston apartment, I pulled out the letter I'd written to myself on the first day of college, the one where I'd documented my parents' words and promised to succeed. I read it one last time, then carefully placed it in a box with my Chancellor's Medal, my graduation program, and all the other artifacts of that journey. Then I sat down and wrote one final message to myself. You did it. You survived. You succeeded. You learned that your worth was never dependent on their belief in you. You learned to be your own advocate, your own champion, your own source of validation. The girl who sat in that living room at 17 and was told she didn't deserve support. She would be so proud of who you became. She would be amazed at your strength, your resilience, your refusal to give up. You are Dr. Rachel Morgan now. You've earned your PhD, you're helping other families heal, you've transformed your pain into purpose. And maybe that's the real ending to this story, not forgiveness, not reconciliation, not even revenge. Just transformation. Just taking something that tried to break you and using it to build something beautiful instead. You are enough, you always were, and now, finally, you know it too. I sealed the letter, placed it in the box with everything else, and put the box away. Some stories don't have neat endings. Some wounds don't fully heal. Some relationships can't be completely restored. But some survivors become stronger at the broken places. Some pain becomes purpose. Some struggles become the foundation for extraordinary strength. I was living proof. And every time a struggling student reached out to me, every time I helped a family work through their favoritism dynamics, every time I stood in front of a classroom and taught about resilience, I knew that those 4 years of struggle hadn't been wasted. They'd been the making of me. And I wouldn't have traded that knowledge, that strength, that certainty in my own worth. Not for anything. Not even for the college experience I'd missed, because what I'd gained instead was so much more valuable. I'd gained myself. THEND. Thank you for following Rachel's journey. Her story reminds us that sometimes our greatest struggles become our greatest strengths, and that the belief we build in ourselves is more powerful than anyone else's doubt.